Hey, I'm Connor,
And I'm Luke.
and we're Friends Stream Sports. We're real friends from real different states, and we're getting some real nice feedback here as I hit mute on Zoom because host and producer, we're a do-it-all kind of show. Luke, how you doing tonight, man?
I am fantastic. I've got myself a cold one, and I'm ready to dive into some NBA takes.
Oh, yes, we are very excited for tonight. Uh, and we are so pumped for some of this great feedback I'm continuing to get. But we're gonna get this going here, and we're back on it. So, yes, as we mentioned before, Rutledge is out tonight. Rutledge, his mommy's in town, and they're going to have dinner, and that's going to be very nice. So now we get to have some real man basketball takes, some real man NBA talk, and yeah, get to enjoy some adult beverages here this evening. So as we go through tonight, Luke being in Atlanta, the home of the current number 4 seed Atlanta Hawks, and me being in the hometown of the worst team in the NBA right now, Orlando Magic, that are actually playing tonight. We're going to spend some time breaking down the top teams of the Eastern Conference, where they stand right now, and where we think they're going to go, maybe some storylines, where their finish, and more importantly, where their ceiling is. Is their ceiling the first floor of their house? Is their ceiling that of a vaulted cathedral? We'll figure this all out this evening. So, uh, Luke, without further ado, I don't know if you have any good starting words, not parting words, but starting words for our viewer.
I'll just say the Hawks are currently winning by 1 point. It's still pretty early in the game, but shaping up to be a lively one in
That
Atlanta.
that it is.
I'm ready to dive into.
Even though Atlanta has Trae Young, Orlando has a guy on their team whose last name is Bacon. So that's pretty good.
You cut out there for a minute, so I don't know what you said. I'm just going to assume it was really positive about the Hawks.
It was really positive about the Hawks and also positive about the player for Orlando whose name is Bacon. So that is where we're at tonight. So, but let's start at the very top of the Eastern Conference here. The Philadelphia 76ers, their current record 39 and 18, just lost the other night to the Warriors. Joel Embiid leads the team with 29 points a night, nearly 30 points. Joel Embiid leads the Sixers with 11 boards a night, and Ben Simmons leads the team with 7.1 assists. So, Luke, when you're taking a look at the 76ers, what's kind of maybe the first question or so that comes to mind as it relates to this team?
I think the biggest question is can Embiid stay healthy for several consecutive playoff rounds? Because if he's healthy and he's dominant, they have a shot in any game. And so far it's been like I think they've had better results this year on his health, and but it's just kind of wait and see, just see how it gets through the playoffs. But as long as he's in the game, they got a chance.
That is very true. And what's interesting is the previous Orlando Magic player, Dwight Howard, who now plays for the 76ers, when he is in the game, the Sixers do not seem to have a chance.
No, they Dwight has had a wonderful career. Proud of all he's done. However, he does not bring quite the same things to the table as Joel Embiid does, and but he has a warm body and he gets as many fouls as everybody else does. So he's sometimes in the game.
He is a 7-footer with a long wingspan that can make 6 fouls.
Yes.
So there you go. Yeah, when I was watching the Warriors game, the other actually on my airplane ride, I was catching it the end of it, but when they showed the game before the 6 a.m. Sports Center, watching Dwight Howard literally back up as guys were coming into the lane was not the aggressive Dwight we're used to seeing. But in terms of, one of the interesting storylines kind of following the Sixers throughout the season has been Doc Rivers, his energy, just how he does coaching a team. He does a great job with veteran teams, but if you were to give Doc Rivers a grade so far, what would you give Doc Rivers? And an incomplete is an okay answer.
I think I'm going to do like a little half and half. I'm going to give him a B plus / income. Finish the grade until you see him in the playoffs, and that's where this energy question really pops up, because they're, I mean, they had a lot of injuries. They were dealing with some stuff last year, but the playoff situation last year was, they clearly didn't want to be there. They had no interest in really even competing in the bubble, and so we really won't know until we see him put forth a better effort than that. But early results, I think, they've than they did last year.
That's very true. Yeah. Being the number 1 seed, you can't give the guy a failing grade as it stands a couple weeks into the playoffs. And then I guess finally, kind of the last point here, you've got Embiid, you've got Simmons, you've got Seth Curry, not Steph Curry. Talk about maybe another role player, another key role player that is going to play meaningful minutes, especially in those playoff series.
Yeah, so I think a key guy for them could end up being Tobias Harris, which he has one of the most unfortunate for the team contracts in the league. Like, he is clearly not worth like the $140 million that they're paying him, or whatever the number is. It's really, but he can still be a very useful player. Like, if he can show up and be someone that's knocking down threes, create a little bit off the dribble, and play good defense, I think he could unlock like the next version of the team. So far, he looks a little rejuvenated this season. He looks a little bit better, but so I think he's got what it takes to be like a useful playoff player, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yes, with Ben Simmons not known for his range, nor Joel Embiid, you need somebody who's known for at least a little bit of range. So as we kind of finish out here with the 76ers, kind of the 2 questions we'll go through, just kind of real quick, rapid fire of each team. Luke, where are the Sixers going to finish the regular season? What seed, and what's their ceiling?
The they broke one injury. Take the rest of the regular season too seriously. And that'll enable them to keep their growth. In the playoffs, however, I think they're going to be due for a unfortunately early exit. See them as a team with their current makeup. Like, I don't think they'll get past Brooklyn or even get past Milwaukee, depending on how it shakes out.
Oh, so you're kind of feeling like a conference finals kind of team for Philly.
Yeah, I think conference finals, it could be kind of ugly too. I just think they have too many. I mean, Embiid is one of my favorite players. I love humongous humans that can terrorize everybody, but I think the rest of the roster just leaves a lot to be desired. When you can just ignore a guy in the half-court offense in the playoffs, that really that can really like clam things up. So get Embiid some help is what I'm saying.
Get him some help and get him some range. Trade Ben Simmons for Steph Curry or Klay Thompson.
I think the Warriors hang up on those calls, but
I think the Warriors would not pick up any phone call from Philly. No, I don't think Philly's going to hold on to the 1 seed. I see them probably finishing at the 2 seed, there. Unlike you, I think that Philly could get to the NBA Finals depending on the matchup. And I know we're going to be talking about teams with a lack of big man presence. Obviously they got to have Embiid healthy, things like that. But I don't see them as a true, like, this team could win the title. There's too many potential teams coming from the West that provide just matchup nightmares for Philly. But yeah, so Philly,
I just think that
not a championship ceiling kind of team.
no, I mean, if he even gets through the conference finals, Embiid's gonna have to put up like a 45 and 15 game, and like against the Nets, that's still probably not enough, which is scary, assuming the
Yes,
Nets are
yeah,
healthy.
yeah.
Which I think
Assuming
they're
they're healthy. But
our next top.
speaking of the Brooklyn Nets, they're the next team we're going to be talking about here. I don't know if you saw late breaking news, Big J journalism, breaking stories. James Harden out indefinitely, re-injured his thigh during pregame warmups.
I did see that he had a setback, which is very unfortunate for them. Again, that was my biggest question mark for them, is that if they have all three of those guys, I don't think anyone's going to be within 15 points of them in like any particular game. If they have two of those guys, I still think it's going to be um like I still think they have championship potential with only two of the guys. Um but down to just one, I think is where that's a bit of a stretch. Um but if they can get any two out of Kyrie, Durant, and Harden, like they have a real shot.
And who knows, Steve Nash could pull a Jackie Moon and be player coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Uh,
I would love to see that. I think Steve Nash would average like 40 and 15 in this era.
he probably would. So it's interesting, you bring up a good point, right? James Harden leads the team, averaging 11 assists a night. Irving and Durant both averaged 27.3 points a night, but Jarrett Allen, the mighty Jarrett Allen, leads the team in rebounds at 10.4 rebounds. So I guess kind of, Luke, by virtue of playing high school basketball, you have much more experience than I do in actually playing basketball. So as you get to, how important do you think it is going to be, or how important do you think it's going to be that other teams get to exploit the lack of just a real dominant big man, especially as the playoffs wear on?
Yeah, just to further drive home the point of their lack of big men, so that's their rebounding leader, Jarrett Allen, who is no longer on the team.
That's right. Yes.
He's on the Cleveland Cavaliers now.
Fact check true. Yikes.
Yeah, so I think on any other team where it's like if you have a good offense, but you just get eaten up in the paint and out rebounded, it can become a real. With them, I think the offense and their ability to score like 150 points just really make that team. You have like there's a dynamic of like you can't give up too much on the glass or it becomes an issue, especially where every extra possession matters. But when you have three different guys that can like each score 40, and then you also have one of the best shooters in the league, Harris, and I think it's like ideally you'd want them to get more rebounds, but I just don't think it's going to matter. like they're going to win by 20 instead of 40.
Yes, no, there will be a night when everybody's cold, and you got to be able to get the ball off the glass. So one of the things that when I look at this team, in some ways, I kind of think about the Clippers, or not the Clippers, pardon me, the Nets as potentially this year's version of the LA Clippers. Am I totally off base there, or do you think that this could be a lot of hype and almost sort of that Madden type deal where you put all the best stars on one team and that sometimes doesn't work?
I think there's always that potential, but I think the Clippers were just like a bad mix. I mean, particularly in the bubble, I think I don't want to draw too many conclusions from like just I know a lot of players. There's a lot of bad experiences on their affecting their mental state and like affecting how they felt about playing, and Paul George particularly. And so I don't want to draw too many conclusions about their playoff woes. I think this right now, like the Miami Big Three, where they made it to the finals. They lost the first go around, but they was still like consider a successful team, like making the finals. Um, so we'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if they make it to the final lose, but um, I'd be really stunned if they lost before that.
No doubt. So that kind of leads me into, so you're saying this team is a definite, I mean, NBA championship contender, um, as well as they could win it all. And if they're not at least in the finals, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think like barring kind of a major, or getting down to only one of the big three, I would expect to see them in the finals.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I think that I could definitely see Brooklyn finishing number one seed. I think their ceiling is the NBA championship. If they don't make a deep run, this is definitely a failure of a season. I'm going to put it, if they're not at least in the conference finals, you can put a big old F on this year for the Brooklyn Nets. So a quick little break here. We've got some good viewer interaction here. My apologies if I mispronounce the Twitch handle here, but Alvaro Tigab1 wants to know what we think of the Wizards and will they get in the playoffs? And we're gonna, for our context for tonight, we're going to include the play-in tourney. Luke, give us a quick Wizards take.
Quick Wizards take. I would love to free Bradley Beal. No, I have a lot of respect for Brad. For you want really cut out the Washington situation. They're not very good. But I think with the way Chicago is kind of plummeting, they got even more injuries now. I could easily see Washington sneaking into the play-in, and then it's a play-in tournament. You got a guy that can go for 50 any night. Like it would not shock me at all to see them sneaking into one of the next rounds. At that point, I think they would get trounced pretty badly. But hey, anything can happen. They're right where you want to be, kind of.
They're at least not where the Magic are.
Yeah, I think this says more about the trajectory of the Chicago Bulls than of the Wizards. That like the Bulls added a very good player and have just started to lose more, and that's like opening up the door for the Wizards. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I think they could sneak in, and then it's kind of like they'd have to win. They'd have to do like the win twice in a row, I think, for the play-in as the 10 seed. But you never know.
Yeah, I definitely see the Wizards as a team that if there's going to be any swappage from where we're currently at, I definitely see the Wizards as really the only team that could be a team that is sitting on the outside now and at least getting into the play-in tournament. And you just got to win two to make it to the 8.
Right.
So, but anyhow, so that's a quick take there on our Wizards take, but we're gonna get back up to towards the top of the Eastern Conference standings here and kind of round out probably the third team of the big three in the East here, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. The current record of 35-22, and as you can imagine, Giannis leads the team in points, rebounds, and assists. And unlike my last thought about Jared Allen, Giannis still plays for the Bucks. So, Luke, I guess they had to make a couple trades. There's been some roster shuffling, things like that. Talk about their depth a little bit. How do you think they're going to respond to that depth piece?
It's a Coach Bud question, which I have love in my heart for Coach Bud when he was the Hawks coach and got us I believe our only 60-win season. With the 5 All-Star rotation back in the day, but he has been very unwilling to play his best players like more than like 34 minutes in the playoffs, which is just really confusing. And I think this is like pure speculation. the trades and the acquisitions by the front office seem to be trying to force his hand of like, if we make players 7 through 15 on the roster so bad, a half play is, I mean, they're not like G League player around the playoffs, but if Bud has lessons and in the 40 42 minutes per game, then they could break through.
That's the big thing, right? Breaking through and taking that next step. Here's a question for you. And I'm not going to even pretend to know and be able to pronounce the name of Giannis's brother. So we're just going to call him Giannis's brother.
It's Thanasis.
There you go, Thanasis. But with the right wig, could Giannis be Thanasis for one night? They do a little switcheroony of the uniforms. Giannis come in, everybody think it's Thanasis, and Giannis just goes bonkers and scores like 100 points, because why would I guard Thanasis? I need to draw my attention to Giannis. How likely do you think that would be?
The problem is Giannis is about half a foot taller than Thanasis, which otherwise it's a flawless plan.
No doubt. So that if I was coach, that would be what I would try, which is probably why I'm not an NBA coach. So as we kind of round out some thoughts on the Bucks, where do you think, let's hear, where do you think the Bucks are going to finish the regular season, and what's their ceiling?
Finish basically where they are. I don't see them catching either of the top two seeds. I think so. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I think he's a complete baller. He's an elite defender. I haven't really seen like what they can do with him in the playoffs. Like when the rotations like tighten and things get more slowed down. So that's the big question. I think, if enable them to kind of break through the Giannis wall defense where everyone just collapses, if he's able to play off ball a little bit more and get Drew and Middleton a little bit more involved, then I think this has championship level potential. If they just play more of the same kind of offense they did last year in the playoffs, then they're probably going to be a second round exit.
Yeah, I think I agree with you where they finish, number 3. And I wrote, ceiling, I think NBA finals, two-time defending MVP with, it's not exactly, they might not have the deepest roster, but it's not a bunch of YMCA players on their squad either. They've got some good players. They've got some people as Tim Hardy shout out of the night.
They got some people.
I think the piece with the Bucks that is going to be the most interesting to watch is what their floor is. I think out of the 3 big teams, the Bucks have the lowest floor, and I could see them being one of those teams that gets upset early.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, because the Heat showed the blueprint last year of like, when you just collapse in the paint and make Giannis kick the ball out, nobody else can do anything. But I think Drew Holiday is going to solve a lot of that. I don't know if it'll be enough. I think it will be for round 1, and then we'll see after that point. But
there you go.
Yeah, I think
there you go.
They have
so
some upset potential.
And this would be, I believe, how the seeding goes. They wouldn't play in the first round, but later in the playoffs, a potential team to upset the Bucks would be the current number 4 seed, Atlanta Hawks. Record 31-26 between Trae Young and Clint Capella. That's kind of your main offensive scoring, or offensive leader as well as rebound leader. Luke, before we do our Trae Young talks, because we obviously, if you're going to talk about the Hawk talk, you got to have some Trae Young talk. in your opinion, who are kind of the second and third most important players for the Hawks?
I think Capella, as you mentioned, is vital. He's not. I don't think he gets quite as much shine as some other guys, but he's a rebounding monster. He is a really good rim protector. He's kind of the model for your modern NBA center still being like a viable position, like
Mhm.
someone that doesn't create their own shot, doesn't really shoot threes, but it still affects the game really well. Um, so I think he's like the biggest key besides Trey. And after that, you know, depending on who's available, given the health situation, say Bogdanovich is probably the next guy that you want really involved. I mean, I think the offense really runs just as efficiently when he's kind of on ball versus Trey. Um, so I think in the playoffs, their success is gonna depend on Bogdanovich getting a share of touches and Trey like making a way to survive off ball a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, what do you think? Like, Trey Young can only play hero ball for so long, right? So, especially as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, um, how have you seen and how do you see Trey Young contributing effectively off ball? Did I cut out there a little bit?
Sorry, you cut out there. Yeah, why don't you a second?
How? Yeah. So, how likely do you think this season is going to be for Trey Young's off ball contribution, or do you think he's still got to develop a little bit more?
I still think we're developing a little bit more. I think the team has showed like potential, like they've shown that they can function and the offense runs smoothly when he's not there, like just due to injury and rest. um, but like this, they have not yet shown that they like really function well when he's like gotten clamped up. Like I'm thinking of their game against the Bucks last week or as week before. Drew Holiday just like locked him down. It was like you're not doing it tonight, like not you. And the offense just kind of like sputtered. And um, I think if they're able to get Bogdan the ball, or if one of the Cam Reddish or DeAndre Hunter is able to have a little bit more of a role in initiating the offense at that point, then like they might be able to survive. But right now, Trey is just he runs too much stuff, and so when he's shut down, everything just kind of grinds to a halt.
It'll be fun to watch him develop, that's for sure. Uh, and that'd be fun it's always fun when the Hawks are good. It is always fun when they're good. So hopefully that he continues to develop and then he sticks around.
Yeah, I mean he's got to develop ball and he's got to be able to be more than a turnstile on defense. I mean, he's an elite offensive player when he's initiating, but I think the Hawks as a 4 seed is actually like an incredible outcome for this team. I think they should be like thrilled, like good job, good effort to everybody. And let's let the front office do some more work this offseason.
No doubt, no doubt. So with that, where do you see the Hawks finishing, and what's their ceiling?
I think they'll probably get caught by the Celtics. The Celtics have started to play a little bit better. So that's probably around 5. Um, Ceiling, I think they could, depending on the matchup, if they stay in that 4 to 5 range, then I think they could potentially beat the Celtics in a series. I don't think they can beat any of the other teams in a series. So I think you just hope that you get that matchup and like really fight for your seed if you're the Hawks, and maybe you get one playoff run, which is a lot more than it had in a while. So yeah.
You should be happy with that. Yes, I think that I could definitely see the Hawks ending as the 5 seed as well. I think their ceiling is the conference semis. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, but the 4 or 5 seed winner. I mean, that you'll either play Philly or Boston, or not Boston. Pardon me. You'll either play Philly or Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken, in that second round. And
Yeah, that's going to be ugly.
yeah, so that'll be not smooth for the Hawks. The Hawks might their flight might get grounded.
Yeah, they're better than the bad teams, and they're not as good as the good teams. And like they're just nice. They're right there in the middle, and they're on a good trajectory though. So we'll see about next year.
Yes, and speaking of the other team in the middle, the Boston Celtics, currently number 5 seed, record 31-27. Um, yeah, and Luke, before I share some of their team leaders, do you have any man crushes on this team? Anybody that you want to talk about in particular, just to share your thoughts and love on?
So arguably, many people are saying that the greatest basketball player of all time is Robert Williams, aka the Time Lord, which I honestly don't even know that much about it. So his nickname word, and it's just stuck for some reason. And yeah, I just feel like it's extremely notable that like out of all the nicknames that people have achieved, they have a guy named Time Lord.
Yes,
that's like 85%
that's a
of my
top nickname for sure.
Yeah.
So with the hat, they do have other players on their roster, and you've got two guys at the point guard. I want to hear some of your thoughts on. And I guess how I kind of looked at this was, you've got Marcus Smart that averages 32 minutes a game, and Kemba that averages 31 minutes a game, right? So it's kind of the same. They're kind of splitting some minutes there at the point guard position. Or more or less. And does having 2 point guards share minutes like that mean you have 0 point guards, or is there a way to actually kind of coach that effectively?
I think they could be effective. I mean, Marcus Smart doesn't play point guard in the traditional sense. He's like your defensive mastermind. Like he can guard guys that are a foot taller than him. And then on offense, he's the ideal version of him is a guy that's making the right passes and hitting open threes. He does occasionally get too take some ill-advised shots, try to do a little too much. But he doesn't quite fit into a particular mold, but he's really important for the team. Like I don't think there's another player in the NBA that plays defense and hustles quite the way he does. So yeah, I think it's a unique case where like normally 2 point guards, you end up kind of like the Cavaliers where it's like it's not great. But I think Marcus Smart's just a unique case.
Yes, and no, I think that you're right. It's if you have your role right, we're moving into this positionless basketball kind of style. But Kemba, as a guy that needs to focus on athleticism like Kemba does without having as much anymore, as you get into the playoffs, how is that going to affect Kemba's production and things like that? So want to ask you this question, and we'll call this a leading question, just so you can know how I feel about the big man situation of both Boston and Brooklyn. Which big man situation is worse right now, Boston or Brooklyn?
I mean, a few weeks ago, you would have said that the Celtics is worse. I mean, you have the aforementioned Time Lord, who's and then you have like Tristan Thompson. Like it's pretty bleak. Like you have the shell of we lost Connor. I'm just going to vamp for a while. You have the shell of Tristan Thompson. You got basically nothing. But then after that trade where they ended up with Luke Cornett, who's been, he's been useful. I almost forgot about Taco. You have Taco. So between you have effectively 1.25 useful NBA players. And then on the Brooklyn side, the Aldridge situation is really sad. Like they had a huge upgrade. It was like good for them. And then the Hart situation is just really bad. You hate to see his career in this way. Like he obviously was expecting to be able to compete for a ring, um, and had to retire, which is obviously the right move for him in this situation. So I would have said the Nets were looking better when they had Aldridge, but with his retirement, I give the Celtics a slight edge, but neither is great. I mean, when you're talking about DeAndre Jordan or Tristan Thompson, like it's not good.
Yeah.
I don't think I wouldn't expect to see either. I wouldn't expect to see either of them get significant run in the playoffs. I'd see more like Nick Claxton from Nets, who can like jump and catch lobs, or on the Celtics end, either just where they run Luke Cornett out there. Either one's great, but the Nets have the firepower to like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right. The Nets can overcome that, which is probably why the Nets are the 2 seed, and Boston. I think there was a stretch in February where Boston was like 0 for February, and it was like deep into February where Boston was 0 for February. So no, I hear you. Thank you for freestyling a little bit through our quick technical difficulty. But as we round out here, the top half of the Eastern Conference standings, Luke, where do you think the Celtics are going to finish, and what's their ceiling?
I think they'll end up in the spot Atlanta's currently in as the 4 seed. And I think similar to Atlanta, they could win one round. Unless Tatum and Brown just go to a different level than they're on. It's currently like a 2-man show, and I think we've learned you need to be a 3-man show. You need at least 2, and then or 2 in a collection of like useful players, like the Lakers did last year. And right now they've just got the 2. So I think that's enough to get you through one round, maybe depending on the matchup, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, I see. I think that the Celtics 4 seed. Here's where we're going to differ a little bit. I think that you bring up a good point of if Tatum and Brown go to another level, they can make a deep run. I think they have it in them that they could. And I think that I think the ceiling for the Celtics could be the conference finals. Do I think that it is like just the slightest sliver of a ceiling? Yes. Are they going to have to really do some work and pull off some big upsets? And, maybe that's because James Harden doesn't come back and they have a second round series against the Nets. And, Kevin Durant is more interested in Twitter or whatnot.
This whole thing it also becomes very different if Kemba can just like, if they can fly him to Germany for the platelet treatment or whatever, if he can just get back to like, for a few weeks, I think that unlocks a whole new potential for this team. But the way he's been recently, I think he's just too much of a shell right now.
No doubt. And speaking of shells, we might be talking about taco shells here as we head into the world famous. Luke, you get to participate in halftime hot takes tonight. How do you feel about that?
I'm pumped. I have some extremely spicy takes about stadium food and a lot of opinions. So we could go for a long time on this.
Beautiful. So halftime hot takes. We'll plug our show real quick. Thanks all who are out here for watching FriendStream Sports. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. If we get to 50 subscribers on YouTube, I'll do something crazy. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to do something to celebrate getting 50 YouTube subscribers. So maybe I'll have some Carolina Reaper sauce. I'll just take a Carolina Reaper and just kind of go, just munch on a Carolina Reaper. That'd be wild. So as we jump into halftime hot takes, Luke, I want to hear the question tonight. We want to hear some of your ball game food, stadium food power rankings. Let's hear them.
All right, so I'm gonna have to rank these on the fly because I didn't really put these in order. So I'm just going to say what I think is really important. Like, this is a collection of important stadium foods. First one, to achieve balance in your stadium snacking experience, you got to have, your meals, you got to have your desserts, you got to have your snacks. So Sour Patch Kids, often thought of as a theater food, but when you're watching the theater of life or the theater of competition, they just hit the spot. They're one of my all-time favorites for any situation. So they make the cut. The next thing, I'm thinking specifically like college football,
Yes.
but it could apply to any stadium where you have a tailgate situation outside. This tailgate food that you stuff in your pocket and sneak in. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you wrap it in napkins or like maybe a bag or something. You stuff it in a pocket, and then about the third quarter, you're like, oh yeah, I've got like blank in my pocket, and it's like completely destroyed and like messy, but it's delicious.
I've got a stick of butter in my pocket. Let me eat that.
It works great. Like when you're walking past tailgates, someone's got some baked goods or some brownies or something, you just snag that. It's like, this is going to taste really good later. I'm going to be proud of myself. Next thing, nachos with the fake cheese and jalapenos. It's complete garbage, but it's beautiful. Next thing, very important. You get the little tiny bottles of Jack Daniels or whiskey or whatever, whatever's available. Stuff those in your socks. I don't know how strict your security is where you're observing a game, but then you just grab yourself a Coke or a Coke Zero, and you got yourself a nice Jack and Coke, Jack and Coke Zero, Jack and Coke Vanilla Cherry.
Whoa.
But that's a must.
That's a veteran move.
Well, yeah. If you go to a football game and a beer is like $28, it becomes important.
Yes.
And then finally, all-time undefeated, something that like really big is a chili dog. Ideally, they're going to have the chili on it and then wrap it in like that kind of foil stuff. So where it like kind of like seeps all the way through the bread, really. And by the time you eat it, it's like kind of fused into this one solid, like messy thing, like amorphous blob. And I don't know what's in those things, but they're perfect.
Nice. Oh yes. No, that's it. And I think it's different when you have the kind, like depending on the weather of the day, right? If
Of
it's
course.
the tailgate brownie that you stuff in your pocket might be great in September, but the chili dog might be what you need in December.
Yes. I mean, I would say both of those are better in December because the brownie will melt.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. You need to be a little bit colder outside for the brownie in your pocket.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that does change the dynamic for sure. So Luke, I definitely hear you that in so many ways as it relates to stadium food, there's values of that you have to abide to with stadium food. And for me, a great value piece is the overall messiness of the stadium food. I don't want messy stadium food. I don't. I want to keep my hands clean if I'm clapping, if I'm there will be a time when we're shaking people's hands again and high-fiving. I'm confident there, and I don't want to have like all the gunk on my hands. So as I put together my list, here's some of my halftime hot takes in terms of stadium food. Number one, this is a prime Orlando City summer game. If it's a 6:00 Saturday night game, so it's still 1,000 degrees outside, especially when you're on the aluminum stands there at Exploria Stadium. I know it's expensive, but if they're pouring a ice baby cold kind of lager beer, something light, that it's the only reason why it's not frozen is just the freezing temperature is very, very low. That's tough to beat. That's tough to beat after a half of cheering, and then you take a nice sip of that. I'm a fan of that. Number two for me, and this is a little bit nostalgic when I'd go to Magic games in the past, there was nothing better than that smell of those little personal pizzas. I'm a personal pizza fan. That, just the fake, just that greasy cheese and the pepperoni with and I know I said I'm going to keep it clean here, but the pepperoni with the pools of grease, but that doesn't get on your hands because it seeps into the pizza itself. So big fan of that. Luke, I know you'll appreciate this. Stadium food, halftime Gatorade and Snickers bar. For those who might not know, Luke and I were teammates at Wheaton College. One of us played, and one of us was on the team. And the one who was on the team got to have great snacks at halftime with front row seats to the football games while in college. And then
I had my share of Snicker bars during halftime.
yes. And then finally, and this, I think, where you and I are definitely on the same page. I think that those classic, I'm going to go first off, I'm going to start with the classic, maybe not chili dog, but I'll go with the classic hot dog with the nacho cheese, that fake nacho cheese that gets poured on the hot dog. You can hold it in one hand. If they don't put too much on it, it's not spilling everywhere. It's beautiful. That followed by I'm going to call it the classic bacon cheeseburger. Something, I say classic, now we've got these monstrosity burgers that are amazing if you're at like a sit down restaurant, but something that's like this big and you need a fork and knife. No, I need something wrapped in aluminum foil that I can hold in my hand like this and go to town as I'm watching the game. So
yeah, you can't have any two-handers at the stadium. It's all got to be like, I think the nachos are an exception, but that's like, they're still very controlled. Like it's easy to, especially at a football game, you're like crammed in like this with people, and like you can't be like trying to eat a like 10-pound hamburger, like stuff dripping everywhere.
That's just rude.
It's rude. It's impractical.
It's rude and it's impractical. And Luke, I will also say the DIY cocktails definitely get the honorable mention for sure. Yeah. So whatever that may be, there's a lot of options you can do there.
Yeah. Now I'd like to take this moment to give a shout out to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for having very affordable concessions. If you go to like they have like the restaurants inside there that are very expensive, but you can get like Cokes and just regular stuff for like normal prices, like $2, that kind of thing. And then reverse shout out for the Cobb County Braves, where everything is $1 million. So it's just my Atlanta sports concessions rankings right there.
And because we're on a podcast here, I'm going to take this moment to ask Mercedes-Benz to be our sponsor. Please sponsor us. That'd be super.
I would love that. I went there today. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, got a vaccine, second of 2 out of 2, both of the dome.
Congratulations.
The fine facility Mr. Blank has, and Mercedes-Benzes are great, and I can't wait to have one. So thank you, Mercedes.
Thank you, Mercedes. Please be our sponsor. So that's halftime hot takes, stadium food power rankings. You can catch us live every Tuesday here on Twitch, or come on Twitch. It's a good time. So as we jump back into, we're gonna probably pick up the clip here just a little bit as we try to round out here the rest of the Eastern Conference. The number 6 seed. I saw a great meme where somebody asked, what did it cost for the New York Knicks to be good? And the response was, it cost the Yankees. Yankees are currently horrible, and the New York Knicks are the number 6 seed. A lot of Julius Randle topping the stat sheet. Luke, what's kind of what's the big question in your mind as it relates to the Knicks?
I think the biggest question is still, who are they going to sign this offseason? I give them a lot of props for being competitive and like turning a woebegone organization and looking like a functional basketball team. And I think a lot of teams, like you've seen, just adding like names does not help. Like, you look at the Timberwolves, like I think you could argue they have more talent than the Knicks and just lose constantly. Um, but they got a good coach. They got a coach. He's put together teams that have made deep playoff runs. They got guys that play hard and they play good defense. I don't think they're going very far with the current makeup. But I think we get too caught up in the rings culture where if you don't win a championship, it means nothing. But I think it's hard to have a win. I think you got to give them some props just for getting there. But then obviously they're hoping to make some additions this offseason, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Amen. Amen. And I think as it stands right now, I think just understanding, how to manage Derrick Rose's time as the season ends out, I think is going to be critical as it relates to their performance in the playoffs. Derrick Rose has done well so far, but he has injury problems, right? So it's managing that and maybe not going full Kawhi in terms of load management, but minutes restriction, kind of keeping that in mind, I think is definitely part of being the coach and trying to understand that and manage that well.
And almost any outcome is a win for them this season. I think, unless D Rose is legitimately just a battered, they should just ride whoever's best and just be I don't think they see D Rose or Alfred Payton as a long-term solution at point guard. And I think they're hoping for more at that position. So just play whoever's best, see what happens, and then hopefully the Garden will be rocking again next year, and just generate some buzz for the team. And because they're gonna get some poor kid who's way overdrafted on there that everyone's gonna be hyped about, and it's gonna be a good situation next season.
Lou, I finish in a going to finish in a play-in title. They won't hold on to succeed, but this team to the first round, but probably in the first round. What about you?
I think it's about right. I think the Heat are probably going to catch them. They're going to find themselves in the play-in, and I think depending on the matchup, they could get through that, but they're not going to go any further.
I hear you. Which, speaking of the Heat, number 7 seeded Heat, 30-28, big face coffee, a lot of G Butler, a lot of Bam Adebayo. They weren't to do much. Made the and in a lot of ways, they ran a lot of the team. They kind of quote ran it back with a lot of their players, and it's not like they had a good season last year. So and on the one hand, you're kind of like, what happened? But then on the other hand, you're like, well, they went on a great run, and that's just so that from kind of the top 3 and top the big 3 of the East teams wise, acceptable to get a playoff upset by the Heat.
I think any one of those middle 3 of the Celtics, Hawks, or Bucks could. I mean, obviously, with the Bucks have the memory is fresh in their brain. I would expect them to come in truly desperate to not lose to the Heat again. But sometimes that backfires, and you're trying too hard, even though they're a better team. But I can see the Celtics or Hawks losing to them pretty easily. Even though the Heat have been relatively dysfunctional compared to a finals team last year. It was just they had a crazy run. Tyler Hero was out of his mind for a few straight weeks and he's not been that this season. So I would not be surprised with. I'd be more stunned if they did go on a run this year than if they didn't. But literally anything can happen. They've got one of the biggest enigmas in Jimmy Butler and one of the best coaches in Spoelstra, and Maybe Heroes just took a playoff monster lurking in there somewhere. So
Yeah, playoff Rondo, and now we have playoff Hero.
we have playoff Hero. I don't know if we're going to get him this year or not, but we'll see.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I think the Heat are going to finish in that number 6 spot. I think I don't want to bet against the Heat until the conference finals because they're, that's a team with, yet again, it's their ceiling is definitely higher, but it's not as probable, right? It's not very likely, but they're more likely to make a deep, maybe conference semis or even conference finals run, assuming they get a Milwaukee Bucks matchup. I'm of the frame of mind that Milwaukee's going to press too hard, and they just need to stay loose against the Heat. And I don't know if I see them doing that. So, what's kind of the ceiling that you're seeing for the Heat this year?
I think like that second round kind of neighborhood. I think they are a team that how the matchups break could get further. Like I wouldn't be stunned if they're end up in the conference finals, but I think last year was more of I'm not gonna call it a fluke because you beat the teams in front of you, but it was more an aberration than it was like the normal. And I think this year is kind of we've seen who they really are. Just they're a good team. They got some good players, but Dragic is getting kind of old, and Heroes is still a teenager, and we shouldn't expect that much more out of him.
That no doubt, no doubt. So that's Miami Heat. Now we're gonna go up to the Carolinas, home of Bojangles. Bojangles also be our sponsor. I would love to eat Bojangles in my Mercedes Benz. So Luke, as it relates to our current number 8 seed, the Charlotte Hornets, right? Here's my first question for you. Can Terry
It's bow time, just in case. It was Connor. Nice.
Yes. Hello. We are friend. We're a live show with sometimes internet goes crazy. So don't you love it? Don't you love the liveness?
It's one of those weird times where I don't know whose voice you're actually hearing. I'm like, am I in control or is Connor the captain still?
No worries, man. No worries. But so we're gonna press on here to the Charlotte Hornets. Luke, can Terry Rozier break the space-time continuum with one of his dunks coming up?
Rozier, probably not. Miles Bridges, yes.
Yeah,
I think Miles Bridges has turned into he's obviously a ridiculous dunker, but he's actually played really well this season. Rozier is interesting with looking back to the Kemba Walker situation. Like, I think the Celtics would happily have Terry Rozier back instead of Kemba at this point. But yeah, I mean they're another team where it's like they're kind of like a good job, good effort. I think they've a little bit overperformed their roster, and they're playing some good basketball. They just don't have a ton of talent, especially with LaMelo out and out too, I think.
LaMelo, I saw he just got cleared back for basketball activity, but what does that mean towards the end of the season and continuity and whatnot. So as it relates to the Hornets, I see them as a play-in tourney kind of team, and I don't see them getting out of the play-in tourney. What about you, Luke? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're squarely in the play-in. I think I could see them getting out. Like they've really game there, but I mean they're not going to get out of the first actual round.
No doubt. So as we round out we got 2 more teams here. Luke, thank you so much for joining this evening. We've got our 2 Midwestern teams here, Indiana Pacers and Chicago Bulls. So Luke, I know you mentioned, and to harken back to your Knicks take, your number one thing is, how, the biggest question for the Knicks is going to be who are they going to get in free agency? Moving forward, kind of the same question for the Pacers. How can Indiana avoid more time in the doldrums of mediocrity?
the Pacers are in a much stickier situation than the Knicks because people want to play for the Knicks theoretically. Hasn't quite been the case recently, but historically it is. The Pacers not so much. So I think they're they're a long course here. Like they're not going to be a sign one guy, one superstar, and turn the whole thing around. I think they play good basketball. They're well coached. They usually don't make like signs or trades or anything. I just think they got to hope that they draft well, that those guys pan out relatively quickly, and they can just keep getting better. I mean, they've managed to acquire that didn't think were very good that turned out to be good, and just have like that little bit of edge. You think like Oladipo when he was still healthy, Malcolm Brogdon, like nobody saw him as this level. So keep just that kind of edge of making like really good value signing and drafting well, then they could be back in the mix in a couple years. But it's much harder for sure. They got their work cut out for them.
No doubt, no doubt.
Because the other option is to trade everybody and tank it, but I don't think they're a team that's going to embrace that.
Yet again, just like my Orlando Magic, we were sitting around a coffee table when trades kept on happening and all the good players for the Magic kept on getting traded. But
yes, it was a span of like 30 minutes, and it was like, oh, do you have a Magic jersey? Because you might get a call now.
Good for Aaron Gordon, though. Little West Coast, little Western Conference shout out. I think Aaron Gordon has landed in a great situation. I know Jamal Murray tore his ACL, but the Nuggets are still playing solid.
Yeah, they really found a version of that team for a couple weeks until Murray got hurt, which is a huge shame. I hate to see anyone get hurt, but especially when like they've really found their groove and looked like they could be an actual finals. And who knows if they can kind of fill the void a little bit, they still could be, but it's going to be harder.
No doubt, no doubt. So, but back on the Pacers, I think that this could be a team that finishes outside of the playoffs. I could see the Pacers really kind of slipping outside of the playoffs, and with that, their ceiling will be the one inside of their houses during the playoffs. So that's as far as the ceiling will go on the Indiana Pacers. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they have a low ceiling. I think they're doing their best, but they just don't have a whole lot of talent.
No. There you go, which brings us to another potentially low ceiling team with not tons of talent. The current number 10 seed, Chicago Bulls, 24-33, leave it to the Eastern Conference to have their last playoff seeds, have losing records. Got to give a shout out to newly acquired Nick Vucevic, leading the team with roughly 10 boards a night. But Luke, want to hear from you yet again, kind of same question in terms of Indiana. I mean, I feel like you got a couple more at least. I like Vooch a lot. I don't think he's necessarily your number one guy because he's too, like, he makes impact, but it's kind of quiet impact. I always called Vooch the quietest, like 2010 guy in the NBA. You look up at the end of the night and you look at Vooch's stats and you're like, he was not that good tonight, but he still somehow managed to have a lot of impact. Obviously, Zach LaVine, has a bright future ahead of him, but just I think there's some roster questions that Chicago's got to work through. So, I mean, what do you think? What do you think the Bulls, are going to be kind of looking at moving forward?
I think they're in a tough situation because I mean they gave up a pretty good amount of stuff to get Vooch, and have gotten worse. Which is not great. And then on top of that, they have the looming threat of Zach LaVine's free agents of his mind this year. And I think there's going to be way more interested parties than there were a calendar year ago. So not only did they give up, their draft capital and players like Wendell Carter to get Vooch, you might be stuck with an aging center as like the center of your franchise and also no draft picks, which is a tough place to hang.
That is not a good. That is
So
not a good spot in this NBA.
and all the draft pick, your recent draft pick that is playing is not any good, and Laurie Markkinen. The guy from this year, I'm blanking on his name. He's been pretty good, but he's not, he's not like a huge difference maker yet. Draft pick from this past year, Patrick Williams. He showed some bright spots, but like he's not going to be a guy that's going to carry your team and just make up for LaVine leaving. Which, so you're going to pay LaVine just an absurd amount of money, which will handicap you in one way, or don't pay him and lose a ton of games.
Yeah, the Bulls are in an interesting position, that's for sure. Definitely got to keep Zach LaVine happy. And does that involve him being excited about the future of the franchise, or dollars, or a little bit of both? So we'll see.
They're honest, a decent blowed up candidate. I mean, they have some very tradable contracts as far as like the salary numbers. Like there's a ton of mid-level contracts out there to make trades, but if they max out LaVine and then find someone that's just wanting to take on salary to dump it later, there's Al-Farouq Aminu, there's like Tomas Satoransky, those guys, Garrett Temple. There's all guys that you could maybe move, try to make another space to get somebody else, but it's going to be difficult.
That it will be. But as it relates to this year, I do think the Bulls will have enough to get into the play-in tournament. I think that, they did win the other night. I know they lost a couple in a row, including to the Orlando Magic, which as a Magic fan, I was bummed about because now I'm in the Cade Cunningham sweepstakes. No, I think they can finish out at least, I think they can be a 10 seed, but I don't see them. If they make it into the play-in tournament, I don't see them leaving.
I think if they're still in the play-in tournament, like they're right on the edge, like I said earlier, the Wizards could jump on. I think either that last one in and are going home quickly, or like they don't even make it.
Yep. So that is how we feel about some things in the Eastern Conference. Luke, we already mentioned the Wizards earlier tonight as one team that is most likely to play their way into the playoffs. That's kind of my main team, I think, is the only best chance to play in. And any other teams out there you think have a chance to play in?
The only other one would be the Raptors. I mean, I think they're the only ones that have like the mathematical like odds for it to even be possible. But they've just been pretty ugly recently too. I mean, I don't know. Either of those teams I think the Raptors would have like a better chance, with the championship and some other talented guys in the roster. So, Wiz, if anybody.
Yeah. So no, that I did lose you just for a little bit there, but I think we're talking about the Wizards and the Raptors, and outside of that, that's kind of it. But so that rounds out our 10 seeds 1 through 10, Luke. We have one more segment tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I've loved being here.
We hopefully we'll get you back again for another NBA playoff specific night, and it'll be me, you, and Rutledge on a little Zoom chat, and we'll do some friends drop in action.
Yeah, you know where to find me.
Will do. So as we close out tonight, I want to hear some thoughts about some picks here. I picked some Eastern Conference games, some Eastern Conference playoff team games over the next couple nights. Want to hear who you think is going to win. No spread, just kind of straight up. Tonight we have, and if I believe that this game has started, so if you've been following the Charlotte, if you've been following the Charlotte versus New York game, how do you think it's going to end? How do you think that'll end up?
I think the Knicks are a slightly better team. I think they're a healthier team, so they probably got this in the bag. And I just pulled up the score, and they're up right now. So it looks.
Yeah, I could definitely see the Knicks pulling that one down as well. Next up tonight, and we're headed towards halftime here. Brooklyn versus New Orleans. Do you think Brooklyn's going to hang on, or will Zion just wear a Superman cape and throw down 85 dunks?
I think you would need like literally 5. I think Brooklyn's probably going to take it. Even we need to get my large adult son Zion some help here, because he is probably my favorite person in the NBA, and he scores. Doesn't matter how much they cannot have a winning record. They cannot have any other nice things. So it's probably going to be Brooklyn, even if all 3 of the big 3 are out.
Yes. Last year, Betsy, my wife, bought me, and we're going to do a double date to watch the Magic play the Pellies at the end of last March. So, although I was hopeful to see Zion play, have not gotten to see him yet live in the flesh. Few games tomorrow night. Bulls versus Cavs. Who you taking?
That is a stinky game, but I'm going to take the Cavaliers because of my other my Alabama crush of Colin Sexton, who is just an angry fireball of a player. He is controls powers, but I think it could be good one day.
There you go. I'm going to stick with the Bulls. I think this is a game the Bulls have to win if my prediction of them making the play-in tournament stays. So I'm going with the Bulls just for that. And then as we finish out the Knicks in the second half of their back-to-back, Knicks are playing the Hawks tomorrow night. Who are you taking?
I got to go with the Hawks in that one. I think they're a slightly better team. It wouldn't stun me if the Knicks won, but I think the Hawks have on right now, and I think they match up pretty well against the Knicks.
Yeah, I think the Hawks are going to be really good. As you said, they're good against teams below them, and the Knicks are currently below the Hawks. So there we go. That's Luke. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Any parting words before we sign off this evening?
No, I think that'll do it for me. I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun, and hope to.
Yes. Can't wait to have you on again. Good night, everybody. This has been Friends Stream Sports, and thank you so much. See ya.